Welcome to XSM Podcast. This is your host, Yasmin.
And this is your host, Faith. This podcast topic is about raising and teaching your children.
These children have to be raised with some type of structure. These children have to be raised to understand their feelings. So it's extremely important. Like, do you remember like some of the things that you did when you first started teaching your children? Because and everything we talk about,
Rules and regulations for one.
okay.
Okay. Rule one, when you came home from school, you had to do your homework. No television. But now TV babysits.
Right. And
if you're a single mom and you're still at work, if you have I had a latchkey child.
Okay.
Actually, I had two.
Okay.
One was good, one was not so good.
All right. Now, I didn't have latchkey children.
I did.
Because what I would do is I sent my children to a sitter that was a friend who lived right around the corner.
I didn't have that experience with Perry. I didn't live around. I had just moved to Philadelphia, University City, as a matter of fact. And we lived in an apartment building. So I had to trust that when I was at school, because I went to school, I had to trust that he would come home. He would have his little key around his neck. But my girlfriends know what they would do when he would get in the house. He would immediately call up his aunts.
Okay.
To let them know, I'm home. And they would periodically, check and call him and that sort of thing. They didn't have FaceTime or anything like that.
Well, times are different now because you can have that webcam to keep your
yeah,
right on the
now that's
children.
the good part of technology.
Yeah.
Now I would have had the cams all over. I would have been knowing what he was doing instead of coming home feeling the TV.
How long you had that TV on? It's still warm. Right. Did you do your homework? So,
yes,
okay.
yes. But he was pretty good with following, rules and regulations. But one of the things I think people need to get back to, dinner time.
Okay.
It's very important. With our schedules today, we can't always schedule where we can all sit around the table at the same time. So if you make it your business at least once or twice a week that you all sit down to have dinner as a family, I think that would make a world of difference because the lines of communications are open and you get a chance to sit across from each other and talk. It's very important, but people don't do that anymore.
I know they don't because I watch a show called Blue Bloods, and one of the things
I
they
love
do,
that.
right? Well, and you know what I love the most about it is for them, it's generations sitting down sharing everything because each generation has something to share, and everybody's experience is different. And with that, you're teaching the young children. So this brought me to what I wanted to say to you is. One of the most important things, and you'll agree on this and we'll talk about this too, is the time you spend with your children. You don't necessarily in today's time have quantity. So the time you spend with your children now is quality.
Very important.
So you hear that, moms? Quality time with your children, and that means less tech time. We love technology, so we don't want anybody to get that wrong.
Yeah, we're not saying throw your computers out the window. We're just saying, spend a little bit more time together, as a family talking. And mealtime is one of the best times. Now, I remember reading bedtime stories. I don't know if people still do that anymore. I'm sure they do. But I remember that's how he learned to read.
Well, if they don't, then I would suggest that you do because nothing's wrong with that. And if you don't want to read the paperback book, then you can just go ahead and read the digital book because my son tells me now that he's still an avid reader. And that had something to do with the fact, again, moms, that is what I taught him.
Yes.
So if you teach your children certain things and it becomes repetitious, then you agree with me, then they'll keep doing that.
Yes, and he was a good reader, and he remembered. He said, "Mom, I remember when you used to read." He remembers the books and that sort of thing. That makes you feel really good. The other thing, bedtime is very important. What I see a lot of, even in my own family, I have called my daughter, and I maybe around 10, 11 o'clock, and I hear the kids. And I'm like,
What?
What? Wait a minute. Why aren't they asleep? Because my mother taught me that you have to have, before me time was even invented, that you had to have some time for yourself. So that if you put the kids on a schedule, that gives you the time that you can schedule for yourself, for your bath, for your glass of wine, for you just getting your mind rested up for the next day, you know. But they don't. The kids are still running around at 11 o'clock.
No.
Then how do you think that they're going to be educated? Their minds, they haven't rested.
Right.
You know,
and they're still sleepy.
Yeah.
In the morning, going to bed at adult time. So that's something about teaching, because that, in a way, if you think about it, that would teach the children as they grow time management and how to do things on time.
Well, my son's bedtime was 8 o'clock. And I couldn't wait for him to go to bed. Well, actually 9 o'clock, but 8 o'clock is when,
right?
Because my son used to correct my English.
Mine still does.
Yeah, and he still does. He still does.
Okay.
But he was nonstop in talking and giving me his opinion about things that I couldn't wait for him to be quiet. So, but anyway, he had a structural time where it was time to put your toys away. See, all of those things that you have to teach. It's a time to play, and it's a time to be serious. So therefore, bedtime, bath time, all of those things. Reading the books to him, especially putting the toys. That's the structure that we're talking about.
Right.
Kids don't have chores anymore. What happened to that?
Oh, I was going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that.
What in the world? I mean, we couldn't go outside to play. We couldn't do anything unless, our chores were done. But we live in such a tumultuous time now. Kids don't even go outside to play anymore.
Well,
and you don't want them to because you don't feel safe.
Right. So you have to try to figure that out depending on where you. Well,
you can't even say where you live.
I know. I thought about that.
We used to think it was safe. Oh well, you live in the suburbs, and
So it's not just rural areas anymore. So that's kind of a tough one, but we still want to put emphasis on parents using their own discernment to try to figure out, like, what works best for them. But what we want to try to get across is that you need to make sure that you talk with your children every day.
Yeah.
And you said something very important when you talked about structure. So the only thing that I would add is that parents and you single moms can add the technology as part of all the other things they do,
right,
and not have technology be everything.
Right.
Because what ends up happening, and I was working on a job and I was working with a young intern, and because that intern had spent so much time on technology, when we had a problem, he wanted to go back to his desk. Now, he sat behind me and sent me an email. But I'm like, no, we're going to talk about it. But he wasn't used to any type of interaction. So we don't want to have a whole generation of children that don't know how to talk to each other, who are going to become, what we said, adults and our future leaders. So we're going to have to try to do something about that. We might want to start a movement of learning how to talk. So I guess it's important to share with our mom that you have to be patient, and you have to pay attention.
But, even with the kids being a part of sports, sometimes you can give them so much activities that kind of takes away from time. Because my daughter has 2 children that are on football teams. So that's 2 different football teams.
Mm-hmm.
And there's sometimes when she can't get to one game because so then that's where, her dad comes in. Now he's retired.
Okay.
Where he'll go to the game so that when that child looks out there in those bleachers, they'll see, the support of somebody, in the family. Sometimes, as single moms, we stretch ourselves rather thin.
Yeah, I think so.
We put a lot on our plate. And when we put a lot on our plate, sometimes we put a lot on the on the children's plate as well.
Right. So I think it's more of a balancing act. And like we talked about in prior podcasts, we talked about time management.
Yes.
So all of those things, the structure and the time management, all of that is part of raising your children and teaching your children, but you have to have expectations. Now, I was going to talk to you about something that really moms need to talk about and people need to talk about, and that was sex. Now, we can spend we're going to spend some time talking about sex. And you know why? Because I feel like of all the things that we seem to be able to talk about with people, one of the most natural things that you have to talk to your children about is sex. Now think about it, because we used to have a saying back in the day that if you don't talk to your children about sex, the streets will. But now we can say if you don't talk to your children about sex, they're going to find anything on the internet.
They can Google anything.
Right. So do you remember, I'm sure you do remember, but you want to share with our moms, and just briefly, because we don't want to embarrass nobody, about how you taught. I didn't care if my kids were embarrassed. I talked to them about sex. Do you remember talking to your kids about sex? Oh, that's gonna make you laugh, huh?
I'm just pretty open.
Okay.
You know, I just say, as they say, I just say how I mean it.
Okay.
You know?
All right.
And so they might have been embarrassed, but
All right.
I was, pretty open. Sometimes it's a little different how you deal with it with a son than it is with a daughter.
Okay, well, you got to have the experience of both.
Yeah.
Well, I was very open because I was under the impression of just what you said. If I didn't talk to them about it, then the streets were going to talk to them about it. And so here's a tip that I want to share with moms. When you do sit down and talk to your children about sex, thank goodness now you do have the internet as a guide for you on how to approach it.
Yeah, because there's so much more to talk about.
Yes, because I was thinking the other day, like, could I put a lesson and stuff together? And then I just started now learning about gender, and it's so many new terms. You and I can, and all the different alphabets. And I'm not trying to be smart.
Exactly. I learned more alphabets when I heard David Chappelle.
Right.
GQ. I had no idea what any of that. He schooled me. Okay.
I mean, me too. And I was thinking the other day, somebody said something about I think it was, I don't want to get this wrong, so single moms, forgive me if I'm making a mistake. I think the person didn't identify with sex or at all. So it's like, and I'm thinking, what does that mean? But that has a whole meaning too. So the thing I want to say to moms is that it's extremely important now, because now children may be that on the outside, that their gender, obviously you look at them like they got all the parts. That's a boy. But on the inside, they're like, no, I'm not. I'm a girl. So the reason I said now you have to talk about sex is it encompasses so much stuff now. Feelings, what to do when somebody, because if you have your children prepared, see, I was prepared. When someone said something wrong to me, because my mother and my father actually together talked to me, I was able to say, no, that's not right, because my mother said. And so imagine if you don't teach your child about sex, then they don't know how to respond. Right?
I'm better at it now because I have,
grandchildren.
Okay. So they're used to my mouth.
But it's important, because you can't teach your child about everything, food, how to groom themselves, personal hygiene, finances, cleaning their room. Like, you think of everything and then leave out sex. So that's really important. And that's one of the things, that sex is part of who you are. So I don't know why when people can do some of the craziest things that we can see, but then they don't want to talk about sex. So you have to talk to your children about sex. And here's another thing.
You can't wait until they're having it to talk about it.
Because by then it's too late.
The cat's out the bag.
Right. So that was what I was going to say too to moms, is that the sex talks that you're going to have about 3 different ones, because you're going to have them at different stages, because what you teach your child about sex and people touching them at 6 is not the same thing that you're going to talk about at 10, and then for the young ladies and young men is not the same thing at 15. And one of the things that I make sure in the sex talks with my sons, and this is particularly important for sons to realize, when you say no, then a young lady says no, then that no means no. Yes. Okay, period. And then we also, especially now with the Me Too movement,
absolutely,
people have to understand that women have to learn how to see you and I are cut from what they say a different cloth. Right. We tell a person no. Because I told a person, like, no, you can't do that. And if you insist, I'm going to tell my dad,
Right.
But now you hear people tell me, I didn't know what to. What do you
I
mean?
know. You know something, Yasmin? That is funny you would say that because I keep seeing all these interviews, on television, and I'm thinking, what do you mean you can't say no? What you didn't know what to do? What? I said no,
Right.
and that was the end of that.
Right.
Okay, so
that's extremely
yeah,
important.
so
And
we have to let our let our daughters know
right.
that when you say no, but it's very important how we teach our sons because they can
Absolutely.
get themselves in a world of trouble.
Okay.
And we've seen young, promising young men who have lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
Their career, everything for a mistake,
Right.
a bad mistake, and
when we talk about the sex, we have to also, that's why I said each talk at each stage is different
Right.
because you have to also teach them of how the law interprets what happens with sex.
yes, I mean we have to change this whole dynamic of everything. Now we have to become lawyers.
Yeah.
We have to know the law.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's part of the talk.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important when we say,
Yasmin,
right.
that is so awesome.
So-
That we have to be that and that.
Yeah, well, you
with
know
that.
what? I got a good idea. So on one of our podcasts for our moms out here, we're going to just do a whole podcast on how to teach your children about sex.
Yeah.
Okay.
Really.
So,
There's so much more that we have to teach them.
yeah,
you
and that's
know.
part of the teaching and the reaching, and teaching is not just sticking your children in front of something because that's not like helping them grow. So another thing I was going to talk about is that we were talking about money.
Oh, I love this. And let me tell you why. Because I remember. Do you remember? We had to start a bank account
Yes.
at school.
Yes.
They teach you all these things, but they don't teach about finance and saving.
Right.
You want a new game for your gaming system, you should work for that and you should save for it. What parents do now, they dig right in their pocket. I need a new game. Well, how much is that? $60. $60?
Right, and you just go and give it
And
to
you
them.
just give it to them without them even deserving that?
Right.
No sirree.
No, and that's another thing that needs to be. And if someone says, "Oh, that's old-fashioned, you're out of touch," no, we're not. We are not, because that's what's wrong with everything, because they are not taught. You have to teach them, and they have to earn something. When my kids got their first PlayStation, they didn't have any games. I bought the PlayStation to be getting it, and they talking about, well, what about the games? It's like, okay, well, you're going to have to earn the games. And so that comes into when you were talking about chores earlier.
Exactly.
My children had chores and they were tied to their allowance. And here's an example. We had a chart on the wall. If you did the dishes, that was $3. Fold up your clothes was $4.
Without asking.
Right. And
without telling.
Right. And everything they did had a dollar amount tied to that. And then I would match what they had to buy them that game. But when they had that game, that meant that they earned it. And these are things that we still need to teach our children.
That is so important.
People just go and buy children expensive. I was reading, I don't want to quote her name because I don't want it to, now it's social media to come back like, we're new to podcasts and Yasmin and Faith said this. I don't want that. They bought their daughter 18, a brand new Porsche. Now, she didn't do nothing to earn it. Why didn't you teach her to do something to earn that Porsche? You just gave it to her. So imagine spending a child their whole life and they're just given things. So that brings about a different type of person, a different type of concept. So we still have to teach them. There was some kind of way your child could earn the Porsche. I mean, she has enough money.
Okay. I'm like, well, who's the child that can get a Porsche?
So,
let me know celebrity
children. You
my
just
God,
get because you can, and then a lot of people say it's because I never had it. But you got to think about how you turned out and how you are able to afford to be able to
Yeah,
buy the
you
child a
can
Porsche.
create a monster.
Right. So you grew up with some type of structure and knowledge to be able to do that. So that's important as
I
well.
remember Arnold Schwarzenegger was talking about he didn't want the maids to make up the kids' beds. He wanted them to clean their own rooms.
Okay.
And everybody thought, "Oh my goodness, what do you mean? You got that, that Kennedy money and that Shriver money, and you got good money, and they're rich, and why not?" Because that's not the way he grew up,
Right.
you know, and so he didn't want his children to. He wanted them to have different values, and I think that he said something about they would leave their expensive sneaks. And I think he would hide one of them
Okay, good.
when they didn't, just to
Good.
kind of teach them. You just because we can give you everything doesn't mean we are going to give you everything.
Right, and
You have
that's
to work
funny
for
too
it.
because actually it's giving the wrong message, because if the parent is wealthy or rich or wealthy and rich or whatever way you want to say it, it's you're the one that's wealthy and rich. The children still have to earn that, but it
Right.
seems like
I got a house. We let you live here.
right, right, right. And that's something I was going to say too, and that comes back to us talking about technology. Today, you have to teach your children. They just take things for granted. The technology, the phone. Well, you're the one, the parents, moms. Listen, you're in control. The access that the children have, you can limit that. There is an app you can just say,
There's
oh,
an app
2
for
hours
everything.
for everything. Only 2, 3, whatever you come up with. But all I'm trying to say is that you have to navigate and you have to teach and you have to raise these children and not just whatever. And that's my humble opinion. But I happen to know that with structure and teaching, it is going to pay off in the end. We're not trying to tell you how to do anything. That's not the purpose of this podcast. We're sharing experiences and we are giving you the benefit of our wisdom.
Let me share one thing.
Okay.
And this has to do with finances. Grandparents give you money, uncle, people give the kids money for their birthdays and that sort of thing. I think it's a really good idea that whatever they give them, that part of that be taken and you show them. You're not going to, if they give you $50, doesn't mean it's $50 for you to spend.
Absolutely.
Okay? You get 25. Or even if you gave them 35 and you said, this here, you're going to put this away. You have to teach them that as soon as you get money in your hand, it just doesn't burn up like that. You have to save. So those are the kind of maybe small lessons that you can teach your children in regards to saving and finance.
Well, these are going to be topics that we on our podcast will explore. We'll pull out some of the more important topics based on some of the feedback that we get, and we will, spend more time on each topic. The most important thing is that I think that I wanted us to get across, and I know you feel the same too, is we just want single moms to know that we understand the struggle. We understand it's hard, but you have to do this with grit, and you have to do it with strength, and you have to do it with structure.
Yeah, well, structure is everything.
Okay, and we talked about that in a previous podcast with time management. So you have to just raise your children. And another thing that bothers me, and I just want to share that, and I'm observing now that I'm out and about and I see young mothers with their children, they are constantly on their own phone.
Oh, my goodness.
Could you pay your child? Because one kid, guess what? The mother was talking so much on the phone, I could have snatched that kid and took it because she wasn't even paying attention. So please, moms, pay more
and
attention.
you have to pay attention to your surroundings.
Right.
How can you pay attention to your surroundings if your phone is plugged in? My girlfriend Simone and I were talking about, getting together with our grown children.
Okay.
And the first thing they do, they come in the house. We don't live together anymore, so when we get together, it's time for us to spend together.
Okay.
Their phones are constantly in their ear. They're constantly ringing. We can't have conversations. And what I say to my daughter is, listen, we don't live together. You have plenty of time to talk to Susie
Okay.
Okay. But right now, and she's like, I'm at my mom's house right now. I have to hang up. Yes, you do.
Right.
Because I don't want to keep repeating myself, you
Okay.
know? So, I mean, not just your children, but we're talking,
The parents.
The parents.
Right. And that would be single moms.
Yes. Or they bring them to your house and they're on their phones and then you're saying, stop, get down. No, we're not having any of that.
Okay.
That's why I have a no children's zone. I don't have a children-friendly house,
Neither do I. But but back to like a real serious tip. You just have to pay attention to all those things. And now, like we were saying earlier, it's not about quantity anymore. It's about quality, and that includes less tech time. Please, moms. And basically, that's pretty much all. I wanted to share with our moms today. So I was wondering if you had anything that you might want to add to that for, raising and teaching children, because it can mean so many different things, but it's just really important that single moms understand what that means. And I know the load is heavier.
It is. And we certainly understand. Sometimes you just feel like you're doing stuff for everybody and you don't have any time for yourself. But you will have, if you schedule, you'll be able to schedule time for yourself.
Well, that leads me to remember that one of the most important things that we just want to get across is that please make sure that you teach the children and you spend time with them, all the extra time you can. And that doesn't mean that you're constantly, on the internet or texting somebody else. Just time for you and your children. So it's been our pleasure today to spend this time with you. So one of the things we want to still remind you is please remember to subscribe. And remember that our website is called xandthesinglemom.com. We really need your support. And we want you to subscribe, and we want to thank you today for listening. And we're going to address this topic many, many more times.
Okay. But our next podcast topic is on child support and an interview with a successful single mother. And you won't want to miss this.
Thank you for listening. Bye for now. This is Yasmin.
And this is Faith.